Autohotkey is a scripting language for Windows that allow you to automate keystrokes, mouse clicks, and basically anything else. You can use it to create powerful macros that speeds up your workflow. You can also use it as a text expander that makes writing faster. Writers, coders, editors, administrators, and most jobs done with a PC can be at least partly automated with Autohotkey, significantly increasing your productivity. To get Autohotkey, go to their site autohotkey.com and click Download. Pick version 2. After installing it, you will see this dashboard. Click New Script, give it a name and pick a location. Select Minimal for V2 and click Edit. Let's start by making a quick hotkey. A hotkey is a keyboard shortcut that performs one or more tasks when pressed. Those tasks can be basically anything you can think of. As an example, I will display a pop-up message when I press Alt-X. First, you write the keyboard shortcut to use. Exclamation mark means the Alt key. Then a double colon. Then MSG box, followed by the text to display in quotes. Save it and find the file. Double-click it to run it. When a script is running, you can see an icon in the taskbar. And if we press Alt-X, a message pop up. You don't need the dashboard to create a script. You can right-click in a folder. Go to New. Autohotkey script. Before showing off more of what Autohotkey can do, I want to show you how to make writing scripts easier using Visual Studio Code. You can write scripts in Notepad, but it's a better experience using VS Code. This is optional. You can skip this chapter and follow along in Notepad. All the scripts will work the same regardless of what you write them in. Click the link in the description and download the program. Install and open the application. Click the extension icon and search for AHK v2. Install the extension by the QBY. Now open the Autohotkey dashboard. Click Editor Settings and pick Visual Studio Code. Close the dashboard. Right-click on your script and click Edit. Check the box and click Open. Press Ctrl-Shift-P, type Workspaces. Hit Enter. Add the folder where your Autohotkey script is located in. Now we are ready to write scripts in VS Code. Hotstrings are a piece of text that gets automatically replaced with a different text. You can use this as a text expander and as an autocorrect system that works everywhere on your computer. First, I'm going to add this line at the top. This just means that you can't run multiple versions of the code at the same time. To write a hotstring, write double colon, then your hotstring, double colon again, and then the text to expand to. Now right-click on the taskbar icon. Click Reload. We need to reload the script after each change before the script updates. If we then write BTW and press space or tab, it changes to by the way. A useful case for hotstrings is to use them with your email address. Now typing EEE will write your full email address. I like to use triple letters for my most used hotstrings because they are convenient to type, but you rarely type them by accident. You can also add an asterisk in your hotstring, like this. This changes the hotstring's behavior. Now you don't need to press space or tab after the hotstring, it activates instantly. You can use hotstrings for bank account numbers, phone numbers, addresses, email signatures, or any words or blocks of text you type a lot. The next thing I will show you is the run command. Use it to run applications or open folders and files with a hotkey. I'm going to use the Windows key and C to launch Chrome. First, the key combination. The hashtag sign means the Windows key. Double colon, run. Then the path of the program, in quotes. Save and reload. Now if we press Windows key and C, Chrome opens. Sometimes Autohotkey knows what you mean when you just write the name of the program. In this case, we can replace the path and just write Chrome. Let's try another. This will open YouTube in your default browser when you press Windows key and Y. You can also use the Run command to open folders. This will open your download folder when pressing Windows key and D. For this to work, you need to change the username and the path to your own username. Alternatively, you can use this code instead. This is functionally the same, except it fills in your username in the path automatically. And so it's more copy-paste friendly. Let's add another. Windows key and W to open the folder where I keep all work-related files. Let's say I download something I need for work, maybe an image file. I can easily move it to the correct folder. I press Windows plus W to open the work folder, then Windows plus D to open the download folder and drag it. You can save a surprising amount of time if you don't have to click around in folders and subfolders. This one will launch the Autohotkey documentation with Windows key and H, assuming you installed Autohotkey in the default location. This can be very handy when writing Autohotkey scripts. This one will open this Autohotkey file in the program you picked as default editor. The next thing is the send command. You can use it to send text or keyboard inputs. A useful thing is a hotkey that will write the current date or time. I will use Ctrl-Shift, as the hotkey. Then send, followed by this: the day, /the month, /the year. These blue text that starts with _ are built-in variables that you can use to get information about the system, including file paths and time information. And if we try it, it writes the date. You can change the order to be month first if you prefer. You can also use M to change to using letters instead of numbers. You can also change the separators like this. We can then add another hotkey. Ctrl-Shift- for the time, like this. You can see all the different time variables in the documentation. Next is using send to make macros. A macro is a series of action you can trigger with a single button. If you perform any kind of repetitive tasks on your computer, you can save yourself a lot of time with this. When editing videos, a thing I might need to do is freeze on a frame for a few seconds. In the software I use, DaVinci, it's a bit of a hassle. Here is the steps I need to do. Cut. Move one frame back. Cut again. Select the one frame clip. Freeze frame. Change to trim edit mode. And then change clip duration. Luckily, all of these actions have a keyboard shortcut in DaVinci, so I can automate this and do it all with a single button press. First, we assign our hotkey. I will be using Shift and F. Because we are using multiple action in our hotkey, we need to surround them with curly brackets like this. Then we use the send command, followed by the first input in quotes, the number 1 key, which is what I use to cut in DaVinci. Before adding the next keyboard command, we add a sleep command. This waits 100 milliseconds before continuing. This is necessary to make the code reliable. Sometimes Autohotkey will send inputs faster than the software can keep up with, resulting in some of the inputs not being performed. So we wait a bit after each send command. If you experience that a macro is unreliable, the solution is properly to increase sleep time. We then add the next keyboard input in our macro, which is the left arrow key. Notice the curly brackets. Special keys such as arrow keys, enter and escape need to be surrounded by curly brackets. You can find this information in the documentation. We then add in all the other keyboard inputs, sleeping after each one. We cut again. We select with Shift and V, freeze with Shift and R. Select Trim Mode with T. Change clip duration with Control and D. We write in 200 milliseconds. And confirm with Enter. Let's try it out. I press Shift F, and Autohotkey sends all the keyboard inputs. This hotkey is specific to a certain program. It would be smart to limit it to only work with that program. This way, you can reuse the same keyboard shortcuts for other programs. Add this above the macro. This means that all hotkeys below this line will only work in DaVinci Resolve. Make sure to replace the resolve.exe with the correct name of your program. You can find this using the Windows Spy. With the program open, right-click on your script and click Windows Spy. You can see the name here. Any hotkey you want to work in all programs, you write above the application-specific hotkeys. We can also create hotkeys that performs tasks involving multiple programs. Let's say I have a bunch of invoices open in different tabs in Adobe Acrobat, and I want to type in the amounts in an Excel spreadsheet. The way to do it manually is to copy the number, Alt-Tab to Excel, paste the number in the correct cell, go back to Acrobat, close the tab, and repeat. If you need to do something like this hundreds of times in a row, it's going to be very unpleasant. We can make a hotkey that does this with a single button press. I have written this macro. Here is how to use it. I select the correct starting cell in Excel, then come over in Acrobat. I hover the mouse over the amount and then press the W key. It inputs the value in Excel and closes the invoice. I then repeat for each invoice. Here's how it works. This double-clicks the mouse to select the number. This copies the number to the clipboard. The first line clears the clipboard. The second inputs Control-C, which copies. The third line waits for the clipboard to be filled. This is necessary when copying to the clipboard to make it reliable. This switches to Excel and wait until it's active. Again, the wait command is necessary to make the code reliable. Otherwise, Autohotkey might send an input to a program that's not ready to receive it. Then paste the number with Control-V, sleep, and then move down one cell with the arrow key. Then we switch to Acrobat. Then send Control-W, which is the Acrobat keyboard shortcut to close the current tab. This is just a basic example. You can expand it to also input invoice number and date and so on. Any kind of data entry have huge potential to be streamlined or automated with Autohotkey. You can do a lot more with Autohotkey than macros. It's a scripting language with functions and variables and so on. A function is a bit of code that can be reused. Things like run and send are functions. These are built into Autohotkey, but you can also write your own functions. Here is a simple function I have written. You have the name. You pick the name. You can call it whatever you want, but pick a name that makes sense. Then we have the parameters in the parentheses separated by a comma. Parameters are bits of information the function need to work. Not all functions have parameters. If you don't need them, you just let the parentheses be empty. We then have two lines. The first sends the keyboard input in the first parameter, and the next sleeps the duration of the pause parameter in milliseconds. What this function does is to allow you to send a keyboard input and then wait in a single line of code instead of two. This makes the code more compact and easier to write. We use it like this. The name followed by keyboard input parameter, in this case, the 1 key. Then a comma followed by the delay parameter. So this can be changed to this. Using our own function, we now send an input and wait in one line. We could also change the function like this. This makes the pause parameter optional and give the pause a default value of 100. Now we can skip the pause parameter like this. Only if we need a pause duration different than 100 do we write it. So, this can now be changed to this. I think not having all these sleep lines make it easier to both read and write macros. As another example, if we take a look at these 3 lines that copy to the clipboard, it's likely that we will need the clipboard for something else in the future, so we can put these lines in a function that we can reuse. It looks like this. You then change the macro to this. When you notice you have duplicate code, it's often smart to put that code in a function. Here is a cool tool I made in Autohotkey. Let's say you download some stock images online of dogs, but the file names are generic and not useful as an identifier. I can select the files. Press Shift-Alt-R. An input box opens. I then type in a name and press Enter. And it renames all the files to that. Here's the code. It is limited to only work in File Explorer. Then, our hotkey. We then copy all the selected files to the clipboard using our own copy clipboard function we made earlier. If we were to look at the clipboard content, it would look like this. The full path of the files, 1 file per line. This line opens the input box and saves the text the user types in a variable. A variable is a container that saves a piece of data, such as a number or a piece of text, that we can then use later. This counter variable keeps track of the number at the end of the file name. Then we have a loop. A loop is a block of code that gets repeated a number of times. In this case, it repeats once per file in the clipboard. So with 14 files, this block of code runs 14 times. This increases the counter by 1. Split path allows you to extract information about a file, such as its folder and file extension. A loop field contains the current file the loop is working with. Then parameters for the folder and file extension. The ampersand means it's an output parameter. So split path takes the full path in the first parameter, then creates these 2 variables and save the folder and extension information there. Here we can extract the file name, but we don't need it, so we just have an empty comma. With new full file path, we assemble the pieces and create the new full name, including the folder, the name from the input box, the counter, and extension. To rename a file, you use file move. First the old full path, then the new full path. The next time the loop runs, a loop field contains the next file in our clipboard. It will then take that file and rename it to the same, except the counter is 1 higher, and repeat for all the files. I can expand this system by adding these similar hotkeys. One adds a prefix to the file name, the other a suffix. The code is very similar. How the new full file path is assembled is different, and the counter is not needed. It works like this. Select the files and press the prefix hotkey. Type something, and it will be added to the front of the file name. And the suffix hotkey will add the text to the end of the file name. These tools can help keep you organized and make it easier to search for the files you're looking for. A common problem when making hotkeys is running out of good key combinations to use. Either the combination is already being used, or it's an inefficient shortcut that requires both hands. Some solve this by getting a macro pad, an extra smaller keyboard where they can map their macros to a single key. However, I recommend a mouse with extra buttons instead. With Autohotkey, this can do everything a macro pad can. Maybe the best mouse for productivity is the MX Master 3S. This is properly my favorite piece of hardware I own. The buttons are comfortable and satisfying to press. It has a horizontal scrolling wheel and 4 customizable buttons. And with the gesture feature, each button can perform 5 different actions. Using just the mouse for common actions is much nicer than keyboard shortcuts. This mouse becomes even better with Autohotkey. You can find mice with more buttons, but they are often uncomfortable to click or easy to misclick due to their small size. But you don't need this exact mouse. A lot of what I will show can be done with any mouse that has extra buttons. To use the MX Master, you need to download and install the Logitech option plus software. Follow the setup guide. Disable app-specific customization for now. From here, you can assign actions to the mouse buttons. You can assign keyboard shortcuts or things like copy and paste, and all kinds of other actions. I like to use the extra mouse wheel to control the volume. A great feature is the gestures. It allows you to do 5 different things with one button. The way it works is that you can click a button normally, or you can click and hold, then physically move the mouse up, down, right, or left. By default, only the thumb button is set to gestures, but you can make 5 buttons use them, giving you up to 27 extra mouse-only shortcuts. You can assign gestures to one of the presets or click custom and assign each gesture individually. First, I set the normal click to undo. I have assigned both the left and right gestures to open ChatGPT. This cool feature built into the software opens the AI in a small window when I use the right gesture. I then ask it a question and use the left gesture to close it. The Open ChatGPT action will close the window if it's already open. I like to use gestures this way because it resets the physical location of the mouse on the mousepad. Similarly, I can use the Open Application action to open the calculator with the up gesture and close it with the down gesture using Close Window. Maybe the most useful thing you can do with this mouse is to assign a macro key for your hotkeys to one of the extra buttons. I will use the top side button. You then write a hotkey like this. X button 2 means the top side button, but it will only work if it's mapped to forward. This means that this hotkey will now activate when I press the mouse button and escape, allowing you to open the task manager with a single finger instead of having to hit 3 buttons. Once you have written one hotkey like this, it disables the normal function of the first key and turns it into a modifier key, like Control or Shift. Don't write escape first. That would disable the escape key. The great thing about this is that it turns your entire keyboard into a macro pad while you hold down the mouse button. Instead of having to awkwardly stretch your left hand to hit multiple buttons or take your right hand off the mouse to hit buttons out of reach, you hold down the mouse button with your right thumb and use a single finger on your left to activate your hotkeys. You can use this for both your complicated Autohotkey macros and basic keyboard shortcuts, allowing you to turn everything into a single key action. You can still use the mouse button by itself, like this. But because it's now a modifier key, the hotkey will activate on release, instead of when it's pressed down. I think this is better than using a macro pad, because it takes less space on your desk, and your hand does not have to travel between your normal keyboard and your macro pad. A neat little thing I made using this is a quick app switcher. When working with more than 2 apps, Alt-tabbing is not that great. Instead, I have assigned a unique key for each of my most used programs. This way, I can instantly switch between apps using my mouse macro key. The code looks like this. The empty hotif line means that the hotkeys below will work in all programs. The hotkey uses the macro key plus another key. If the app is open, it switches to that app. And if it's not, it opens it instead. So the same key can both switch to and launch the program. The same applies to the other programs, but with a different shortcut. Now I can always switch to and launch a certain program with a certain key. This is a simple thing, but because I do it so many times a day, it's a big improvement. In the Logitech Options software, you can create app-specific settings. To do this, click Add Application and find your program. You can change between global and your program in the upper right. Here's my setup for editing, as an example of how to streamline your workflow by making your most common actions mouse only. I have assigned the horizontal wheel to Control plus and Control minus to zoom in and out. I then assign the lower side button to the half key, which I use to toggle snapping. Undo is assigned to the thumb button, which is especially useful for video editing. The middle button is mapped to Alt-Shift-8, which uses a toggle I have made in Autohotkey. When editing, I am constantly switching between selection mode and trim mode. They each have a keyboard shortcut, A and T. It would be nice to do this with the mouse, but having to use two mouse buttons is not ideal. Instead, we can make a toggle with Autohotkey and switch with a single button. Here's the code. We use Alt-Shift-8, which we've mapped to the mouse key. There's a toggle variable. When you click, if the toggle is 1, it changes to 2 and sets it to trim mode with T. If it's 2, it changes back to 1 and sets it to selection mode with A. The static keyword prevents the toggle variable from being reset to 1 every time you click the hotkey. Now I can switch between them with just one mouse button. If you want more mouse-only shortcuts but have run out of buttons, there are two methods you can use. The first is to use your macro key to create multi-mouse button shortcuts like this. This gives you 3 extra mouse-only shortcuts. You hold down the macro key and then click the left, right, or middle mouse button. You can do the same with the mouse wheel. You hold down the macro key, then scroll up or down, giving you in practice a third mouse wheel. You can use it, for instance, to scroll both horizontally and vertically, as well as zooming in and out using only your right hand. You can go further and create a second macro key like this. X button 1 means the bottom side button if it's mapped to back, giving you an entirely new set of macros for both your keyboard and mouse, plus a fourth mouse wheel. Another way to add more mouse-only shortcuts is with double clicks. For example, if I click a button once, it copies, but if I click it twice, it cuts instead. Here's the code. First, the button we want to add double clicks to. The first click starts a timer, and when the timer expires, it sends an input depending on the number of clicks. Here you write your single-click action, and here, the double-click action. I will put a link in the description to the mouse if you're interested. There are others that can do similar things, but this is the best mouse I've tried. Not every program have keyboard shortcuts to every single function, so sometimes you might need to add mouse clicks to your automations. You should avoid using mouse clicks in your automations if you have other options, as they can be very unreliable. If anything on your screen moves, or the screen change resolution, it breaks. I'm going to make a macro that clicks on the Customize Chrome button, then click the red theme, then click again to close. It's not a very useful macro, but it's just an example. To make it, first thing we need is the screen coordinates of where we want to click. You can use the Windows Spy tool for this. But there is a better way. I made this hotkey. It saves the mouse coordinates to the clipboard with Windows key and Z, and then play a beep sound. When writing a hotkey where the effect is not visible, I like to add some kind of sound effect as a way to confirm it worked. The first number is the frequency of the beep. The second is duration in millisecond. You can also play an audio file like this. I hover the mouse on the Customize Chrome button, press Windows key and Z to save the coordinates to the clipboard, then click with the mouse. I can then press Windows key and V to open the clipboard history. Clipboard history is built into Windows. Now I write my mouse click macro. To click, you write mouse click, followed by which mouse button, then the X and Y coordinates of the screen. I open the clipboard history and fill in the coordinates. The UI elements are a bit slow to appear, which is why I sleep for 200 milliseconds between clicks. Let's try it. It clicks on all 3 locations with just a keyboard press. There are ways to click on UI elements even as they move around on the screen. Just as an example, let's say I want a hotkey that clicks on this little icon here. But it's not always in the same position on the screen. First, open the Windows snipping tool with Windows Shift-S and copy the icon. Then open Paint and paste the image. Make sure to remove all of the white area. Save the image somewhere on your PC. And here is the code. It's limited to DaVinci Resolve. The hotkey is X button 2. This line means that the coordinates below refer to the pixels on your screen. Here, we find and save the current mouse position in these two variables. And here, we search for the image on the screen, and saves the coordinates of the image in these other two variables. Make sure to change the path here to the correct path of the image. You can specify the area of the screen you want to search. Here, we just search the whole screen. If the image is found, we click on it. Then, we move the mouse back to where we started. And if the image is not found, it displays an error message. And if we test it out, it misses by a bit because the image included some of the area outside of the clickable icon. But we can adjust the click coordinates by adding or subtracting from the variables. In this case, adding 5 to the X value works. And now the hotkey clicks on the icon even as it moves. You can use this technique in combination with keyboard shortcuts to create powerful automations that uses both the mouse and keyboard. The ability to convert Autohotkey version 1 code to version 2 can be very useful. Version 1 have been around for longer, so lots of code online is version 1. Let's say I want to make an auto clicker in Autohotkey. I don't know how, so I Google it and find this code. This code will click 20 times per second if you hold Shift and left mouse button. But if I copy and paste it, it doesn't work. The red lines means the code is invalid, because it's version 1 code and I am using version 2. So you need to convert the code first. Luckily, there is a tool to do this, so you don't need to learn the difference between V1 and V2. Go to this link and download the tool. Unzip the folder and open Quick Converter V2. Paste the code in and convert. Then copy and paste the converted code. And now it works. By the way, everything after a semicolon is a comment. It gets ignored by Autohotkey. You can use comments to describe what code does, or if you want to temporarily disable some code without deleting it, you can comment it out. Here is a couple of quality of life tips that you might find useful. The first is to auto-reload your script when you save it. It's annoying to have to reload your script after each change. Here is the code. If you are using Notepad, change it like this. The hotkey is Ctrl+S, which is the keyboard shortcut to save, in both VS Code and Notepad. Notice this symbol. This means that the hotkey preserves the original keyboard shortcut instead of overwriting it. So this saves the file, then sleeps, then reloads. We reload our script manually one last time. If we go back to our message box hotkey, we can change it. Press Ctrl+S to save, and it updates without having to reload the script. I find having to reload the script after each change very tedious, so this is a lot nicer. The second tip is to make Windows run your script on startup. This script is meant to always run in the background. Instead of having to find and run your script every time you start your PC, you can do that automatically. Press Windows key and R to open the Run window. Then type in shell:startup. This will open your startup folder. Make a shortcut of your script and drag it to this folder. Now your script will run on startup. This is all I have for you. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. This is nowhere near a complete explanation of what you can do with Autohotkey. Just the things I personally find most useful. Almost anything you can think of can be automated with Autohotkey. If this video was useful, like and subscribe.